Aafia Siddiqui pleaded for calm in the Muslim world, telling her supporters not to protest violently after she was handed down what amounts to a life sentence for the attempted murder of Americans in Afghanistan. Siddiqui spoke for 30 minutes, often rambling about her dreams in prison, genetic testing, and her belief that Israel and her prison warden were plotting to attack the United States. The defense had recommended a 12-year sentence, telling the judge their client was mentally ill, a claim Siddiqui denies.
What we had today was a vivid insight into the state of mind of Aafia Siddiqui. And I think without question, people were shaking their heads.
Afghan police detained Siddiqui along with her son in 2008 after finding her with cyanide and notes on New York landmarks. U.S. authorities, who first accused her of supporting al-Qaeda in 2003, came to question her. During her trial, 6 witnesses testified that she grabbed a weapon belonging to a U.S. soldier and opened fire. But since her conviction, military documents about her arrest have been leaked, and they make no mention of her firing the gun. Siddiqui's supporters in the U.S. as well as her native Pakistan believe Siddiqui had been held in a secret prison prior to her arrest and tortured.
86 years for a woman who's never harmed anyone in her life, and no time and no identification of the people who kidnapped her, who tortured her, and who caused the same for her 2 children and family. Where is the justice in that?
Responding to public pressure, the Pakistani government spent a reported $2 million on her defense and has called for her repatriation. After the sentencing, the Pakistani embassy told Al Jazeera, "We will continue our legal and diplomatic efforts for her transfer to Pakistan." Outside the federal courthouse where protesters gathered, prosecutors refused to comment. But the judge said there was no credible evidence of a secret detention by the U.S. prior to her arrest.
What we don't know is what other documents are out there, because the classified evidence has been denied to the defense. We believe that there are more documents out there.
Siddiqui's lawyers say they have plenty of grounds for an appeal, from that leaked military document to her mental state during the trial. In the meantime, the judge recommended that she be held in a federal prison in Texas where she can receive psychological treatment. Kristen Salumi, Al Jazeera, New York.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, friends, as well as our detractors who may be tuning in, we welcome you to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I am pleased to be your host, El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. And again, we welcome our friends and guests in South Africa, the United States, and around the world. Today, we have another very, very important topic that we want to discuss. We have discussed this topic in the past, and by the grace and mercy of Allah, we still have the strength of mind and body to continue the struggle on behalf of a political prisoner that we feel very deeply about. Right now, I'm out of town. I spoke in Boston this past Friday. I am now in Connecticut, and we have been experiencing a number of challenges this morning. Not the least of which is my access to documents that I thought I would not have a problem having access to from my laptop, but I am. And so the startup questions that I had for my special guest today, I'm going to have to try to draw from memory as best I can, but given the fact that I have been so close to this case for so long, that should not be a problem. As our guest today, we have a brother who, along with his family, his wife, and his community, was my host for this Friday's visit to Boston. Imam Abdullah Faaruuq. He is a guest that joined us once before, and I am very deeply honored to have him join us once again for this, especially for this very important topic. Why? Because this is someone who knew Aafia Siddiqui. Most of her years in the United States was spent in Boston, Massachusetts. When Aafia arrived to the US, she spent her first year of residence in Texas, Houston, Texas, where she resided with her brother, her only blood relative here in the States, and she attended as a freshman the University of Houston. For those of you who know the story, you are aware of the fact that after her first year stint at the University of Houston, she received a full scholarship to MIT, where she went off graduating with honors and going from there to Brandeis University, two of the leading Ivy League institutions of higher learning in the world, where again she graduated with honors with a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. While in Boston for all those years, she met a number of people. She crossed paths and interacted with a number of people who, most of whom became her friends, and were very impressed with her, both Muslims and non-Muslims. And among the Muslims was Imam Abdullah Faaruuq, and his family, mashallah ta'ala. I am I'm pleased to have him with us as a guest today. He is the resident imam of the masjid for the praising of Allah, Masjid Alhamdulillah. He is one of the senior clerics of that region of the country of New England, and especially for Greater Boston, one of the senior religious leaders, and just a well-respected figure, a very beloved figure. So without any further ado, let us welcome our brother and begin this conversation. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm sitting where you were sitting yesterday.
You're sitting where I was sitting yesterday.
Did you hear me? I said I'm sitting where you were sitting yesterday.
Yes.
Yesterday when you were doing your program. And
Alhamdulillah.
I want to greet everyone with the greeting words of peace. I'm really wishing this for all of humankind, that we would be able to find not only the path, but also the will to follow that path to peace that we so desperately need in this world today. Ameen. And I ask Allah to have mercy on us and to guide us to the good of this life and the life to come.
Ameen.
Can you hear me well?
Yes. At times you kind of break up. I wish you had maybe some earphones or something that you could use, but inshallah ta'ala, we'll try to make the best of it as we can.
I can get some earphones. Hold on for a second.
Okay, inshallah ta'ala.
Briefly.
That'll be good. All right. So brothers and sisters, as we are, mashallah ta'ala, as we are waiting for the Imam to get his phones, and hopefully that will improve the quality of the sound, let me say this. While I was in Boston this past weekend, Friday and Saturday, there was supposed to have been a bazaar on Saturday, but unfortunately the weather conditions were such that the bazaar was canceled, and so we were not able to have our human rights table with our books on it, and in particular the book of Imam Jamil Abdul Alameen that we recently released. But nevertheless, the time spent in the home of our brother and sister was well spent. I did a couple of presentations from there, one on the issue of the Quran and Sunnah's position, or the Quran and Sunnah's teachings on the issue of jihad and terrorism. You know, this issue from an Islamic perspective. We did that, and we also had a political presentation that we did, and I also participated in a panel discussion out of Florida on the upcoming elections. And so, alhamdulillah, it was time well spent in Boston, right in that space where the Imam is going to be addressing us from today. But being in Boston, I was met with questions, as I am every time I visit the area, concerning Aafia. What's going on with Aafia? Can you give us an update on Aafia Siddiqui? And so this is what we did. You know, we discussed Aafia Siddiqui with those who raised the question about her condition, and inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue that discussion now with the Imam who knew her, the Imam who knew Aafia Siddiqui, along with his wife, Sister Sophia. And I had a good conversation with Sister Sophia in the living room yesterday. I was able to record it, and what Sister Sophia had to say to me, and what Imam Abdullah Faaruuq is going to share with us all this afternoon, is going to factor into the update that we are planning to do on the book. We are behind on doing this update. I didn't want to just release another edition as it was of Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, Other Voices. We wanted to update the information with you know, what has transpired since this book first came out. And so inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be doing that over the course of the next month. We're going to be updating the manuscript, and what you hear today and what Sister Sophia shared with me yesterday in our conversation is going to factor into this update, inshallah ta'ala. So again, without any further ado, without Imam, the benefit of those startup questions that I had put together, we're gonna go from where we are. And I want to begin with the first question to you, Imam. What do you recall about that your first time becoming introduced to Aafia Siddiqui? Do you remember when it was and where it was, and what your impression was?
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me now?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Well, I can hear you well. Okay. I first came in contact with Aafia in the public forum. It was at MIT when she was speaking to a gathering. So I hadn't been personally introduced to her, but she became more of a very popular figure because her effort was to challenge the Muslims, especially the men, to look into themselves and look to the situation that we're living under here throughout, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. And why are we in the condition? Why is the world and the affairs of the Muslims in the condition that is today? And challenging them to stand up and to be involved in not any riotous or usurpation of government, but to speak the truth to falsehood, to speak the truth to power, and to become more involved in the affair of Muslim. It's not enough that we pray and we fast and we're taking those 5 pillars that we have in Islam of praying, acknowledging Allah as our Lord, Muhammad as his messenger, of bowing down 5 times a day, and giving charity, and fasting, and going to Mecca. Those are the foundation of the Islamic life. But the real life comes when we're able to reach out into the affairs of humanity, and to show what Muslims are about, in our concern not only for ourselves but for others, and the establishment of justice in the affairs of humanity. So I saw her in the public forum at MIT speaking, challenging Muslim manhood and Muslim people to be better involved in the religion that they have, not only for rituals but for the rights of their fellow human beings. Later on, I was introduced to her, and she came to the masjid and began teaching at the masjid the women's classes, and that's how she became involved in the affairs of the Muslims in the inner city by giving, because she was, I think, Hafiz al-Quran, as well as being, one who had studied the religion and knew it well. And many of the women wanted to sit with her and become involved with the teaching and the learning that she was able to share.
Your wife, Sister Sophia, yesterday, she spoke about those, the experience that she and other sisters had with Aafia, how impressed they were of her, both her character and her knowledge, and how she would, in fact, give presentations to the sisters and both inform and inspire them. Do you recall? I remember one time you sharing with me, and this might have been what you was just referring to. How you said it was at a conference for Bosnia. There was this was during the time when the genocide was taking place in Bosnia, and there was a tremendous amount of suffering taking place on the ground. There was a humanitarian crisis that was widespread as a result of that the imposition of that conflict. And I remember you telling me about the story of how Aafia made an appeal that was so effective that, I don't recall if you said it was you or others who were removing the boots they had on to donate them to the cause that she was raising her voice for. Do you recall that conversation with me, and do you recall that memory?
She was. I recall the meeting that we had was a part of the Islamic Council of New England, the first one that I was discussing when I first was introduced to her as a person who was in the community. She was a part of the college community. But there were a number of meetings that we had with her, and quite often they were done at MIT. And the other one that you're talking about is that she was appealing for us to who had clothing, warm clothing for the winter, to give what we had. And so she was arranging for there to be a container, and the container was going to have winter clothing that was going to be sent to the people who were overseas. I remember, we didn't have them with us. Some people had bought their things with them. So I went home and I had 2 pairs of boots, and I was deciding to give one, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to give 1 pair of boots, but I can always go to the local store and buy another pair of boots. So I gave both of them, but at first I had, I'm saving 1 pair of boots for myself, and I'll send 1 over. But it came to my mind, it was far better for me to give up what I had completely. And she was the type of person who would encourage you to start to look past yourself to the concerns and needs of other people. And this is what our religion is about. What the Prophet ﷺ says, not one of you believes. Not one of you believes until you want for your brother what you want for yourself.
Yes.
And it even goes deeper than that. If you really have a true love, you should want to give you the best of what you have and the most of what you have to those who are less fortunate.
Yes. And
so I gave both pair of boots.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Tell us about her dawah and the role that Masjid Alhamdulillah played in that matter of the dawah that she was giving outside of the Muslim community.
She was not only concerned with the Muslims overseas or other places. She was concerned about not just Muslims, but people knowing about what the religion is, And so one of the best ways that since she can't get up in front of men and preach and give the khutbah, she was interested in sharing the message of Islam with humankind. And so she developed what is called that we still have going, called the Dawah Resource Center. And we still have books. Some of she had this is going back more than 20 years. There were bales of books that she had imported from India, where they're far less expensive to produce. And so she had she had made an arrangement with a group in India that printed the books, and I went to the airport with her and picked up these books, and we still have some of these books, and they're in what they're hop sack packaging. And so so we still have some of the Qurans. I wonder if I have one here with our name on it at 722 Sharman Avenue, Dawah Resource Center. And so the message of Islam is something that that she was deeply concerned in sharing with people, not Muslims and non-Muslims as well, so we can make a choice. And she knew that the African American community was the community that was not afraid to share the message of Islam. Now, and so so like I said, we still have books from this is 20-something years. She bought about maybe 40 bales of packaged books from the Bible, the Quran, and science, Qurans, Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, Quranic advices. These are some of the titles of the books that we still have and that we're still sharing with people. And so, and we have to realize that once a person hears about Islam, it's not just a spiritual comment on the existence of God. It's not something that just says, oh, God exists. It gives us, and not only for us to believe in him, but there's works to be done. Those who believe, alladina amanu wa amilu salihat, those who believe and do good works. So it's not enough for us to believe in God and see white, black, or anybody else in trouble, and for us to not share. For instance, I mean, people don't know about no interest in loans. They don't know about how to clean their private parts in the most effective way. Now we're finding that they're saying, oh, they have extinguisher machines now, and the French bidet, and keeping your private parts clean without toilet paper, but knowing how to wash your hands after you went to the bathroom, to brush your teeth, all these things that are particular to good human life, whether you're Muslim or not. She was encouraging to all of that.
Yeah. Her family.
Her family.
How well did you know her ex-husband, and what was your impression of him and that marital situation, given what we now know about the accusations of abuse and the way that that her marriage ended after she returned? From what I understand, first of all, the strife that she experienced while she was still in Massachusetts, and then ultimately the way that the marriage fell apart shortly after they returned to Pakistan. Do you have any insight into any of that yourself?
I can't really comment on her marriage. I can comment on the disposition of her husband. He was a doctor and a pleasant man, but he wasn't as interested in the effort to share the religion of Islam as she was.
Okay.
And because of that, I think they might have difficulties, and not, because she was a go-getter, an advocate, a caller to Islam. And he was just a Pakistani doctor who was here in the United States to become educated, and wasn't much interested in the cause of sharing the message of Islam. Let's leave it like that. He was more of a mild-mannered person who was not involved in the dawah that she wanted to give. He wasn't particularly disrespectful to her, and I don't think she would have taken any disrespect anyway. But she was. So it's best that I just leave it like that.
Okay.
What is important to understand is that I ate over her house on several occasions. Once when she was living close to the masjid, because he was a man of medicine. One of the buildings that is attached to what is called the now the Boston University took over Boston City Hospital. So the health center there, they have buildings that are attached to that for the housing for some of the people who work in the hospital, some of the students. So they live there, and I ate twice over there, and another place that's a little just short of a mile away from the masjid. And the food was good. She can cook, you know. And so about his position as her husband, that's between the two of them. Yeah.
Now,
and about the abuse, I don't know particularly what abuse you're talking about.
Okay. Well, we can leave that and just move right along to the next question I have, and that has to do with the controversy that erupted around Aafia Siddiqui not long after she left the United States. She spent 12 years, 12 very fruitful years in the U.S. from 1990 until 2002. 2002, she returned home. By March of 2003, she had become a target for rendition along with her children, disappeared on or around March 30th of 2003. Before I get to the question of what your thoughts were on that disappearance, in fact, even before the disappearance, there was an alert, and I discussed this briefly with your wife, Sister Sophia. I discussed this briefly with her, what her impression was when she, whether she first heard that Aafia was wanted, or she heard that she had been picked up and arrested, which came first. And she said that she heard that she was wanted. She was a wanted woman. And what her reaction was. What was your reaction when you first heard that Aafia Siddiqui was a wanted woman, that she was wanted by the FBI? You recall what your thoughts were when you heard that report?
I was in a bit of a disbelief because although she had a great fervor for Islam, she did not have any kind of indication that she would want to do any violence or want to that wasn't the way. She was a little bit more balanced in her understanding of what was necessary in order to bring the light of Islam to humanity. You can't do it with a gun. You can't do it with bombs. You can do it by appealing to the minds and the hearts of people about the practical use of the religion of Islam in transforming the lives of not only Muslims but the world. So I mean, just the fact that you tell she's about 5'2", 5'3". Some people I say 5'4". I'm 6'2". I'm about a foot taller than she is, and she was not one that was prone to violence. She had children. She had 3 children. How are you going to take care of children and do the things that she was concerned with? It was incredulous to me. I was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. I have a message from a sister from your area, from Boston, Sister Karina. And she sent me this message. It might have been a couple of years ago, in response to a video that I had sent out regarding Aafia. I don't know if it was a video I had done or it was something that I acquired and shared, but she saw it, and then she responded with this message. I'm going to share with you what she said, word for word, and especially given what you know about many of the controversies that have erupted in the Boston area around, a number of things. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on what Sister Karina had to say. She said, quote, "Salam, I thank you for the video about Sister Aafia's case. I would like to recommend that you sue media establishments that have created false news about her. This will enable you to acquire documents during discovery. Aafia got the attention of very hardcore Zionist groups, which she was when she was attending Brandeis and advocating for Islamic awareness. There is no doubt in my mind that she was targeted by Zionist groups who had also targeted the Boston Roxbury Mosque. In this case, the Muslims sued the news media for slander and found out that a very specific group of Jewish lawyers, media people, and money guys met to discuss how to take specific Muslim people in leadership positions down. They created a coordinated attack by creating a legal situation and simultaneously printing news media stories about that person being a terrorist. As soon as word got out that there was proof of a conspiracy against rights, which is a federal crime, the Zionists dropped their case. I advise you to look into who to sue and figure out if Camera or which Zionist groups were involved in a conspiracy to get rid of Sister Aafia around the time she was quoted in the newspaper saying that if everyone knew about the beauty of Islam, they would all want to be Muslim. At that time, Jewish groups started hurling the Islamofascist slur at her, end quote. What are your thoughts on what our sister had to say?
Well, I'll start with what Aafia Siddiqui would say. If people really understood about Islam and knew what was at stake, both in the material world that we're living and the eternal world that is yet to come, they would all want to be Muslim. But even if they were to take certain aspects of Islam and try to live them, they would be able to live better. The world would not be in the hands of a small percentage of humankind, like they say in the United States, about 3 or 4% of the population of America owns and controls 90% of the wealth, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. The woman, I don't know if I won't blame the Jews. I might say Zionists were involved. I don't know that they were involved or not involved, but certainly they have proven the Zionists in situations regarding regarding the ISBCC and other things that they see that able to raise the awareness of the people about the benefits of Islam. They try to smear it because why would they want to not be God anymore? As long as they can play God in the lives of people, then and they can only do that by demonizing Islam, because nobody else is holding up the banner of justice like the Muslims, or like Islam represents for the Muslims and for humankind as a whole. So the woman is perfectly right. I can't really point fingers because it becomes a conspiracy or suspicion. I'm not going to do that. But if you look at the history of what Zionists have done and continue to do, for instance, in Israel, being able to call the Congress or whoever it was without the permission of Obama here in the United States and hold they swing a lot of power. Mm-hmm. And they're receiving billions of dollars each year, weapons support or this general finance. We don't spend those billions of dollars in the inner city for the black people on the reservation, for the natives to this country. We send it to the 51st state, which is Israel, or the 52nd state, Saudi Arabia. Hypocrisy is alive and well and thriving, and the people who are they're straight up liars. I won't call them hypocrites. They use the hypocrites who would like to dance in and out of the spotlight of truth and then go back into the darkness. When they speak, they lie. When they promise, they break it. And when they when they're given a trust, they end up proving untrustworthy. Mm-hmm. But she's correct. I would prove eye to what she said.
Let me share with you what my response was to Sister Karina and why. I said to her in my response, this is a very insightful piece of analysis. I have no doubt, based upon what I've seen and experienced over the years, that your analysis is on point. Unfortunately, litigation of all types, but especially of this type, takes time and money, and we regrettably have neither in reserve. I'm going to bring this to the attention of others, including some larger.
Let me say this.
Go ahead. Yes.
You said that what is correct. Everything that people suggest as a road to take takes time and money and the people to do the work. Quite often they say, Brother Imam, you know what you should do?
Yeah.
I said, well, you can tell me. And I said, good. If the front of the masjid needs to be clean, or they say the front of the masjid needs to be clean, I say, here's a broom. If they say that we should do this or do that, it takes time, money, and the person to do the work. So quite often, even though that you're well-meaning in your suggestions and advice about what should be done, Mauri Saalakhan cannot do it. It takes a team. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, it does. I went on to say I'm going to bring this to the attention of others, including some larger organizational folk, and see what can be done with it. Again, I have no doubt about the accuracy of your conclusion. Believe it or not, I have felt this way for years, but I had no solid, evident proof to hang my suspicion on. Now, the reason why I have felt that way for years, and what the sister said to me did not come as a surprise, is because in addition to the opposition that I was well aware of, the well-organized, well-financed opposition to the completion of that large Islamic center that sits on Malcolm X Boulevard, my awareness of the opposition to that, that dragged it on for years. I was also in Boston at the Old South Church for an annual conference on the issue of occupied Palestine. The annual conference that was taking place there that drew in from different parts of the country and the world very prominent figures. I remember being at one of those conferences when the keynote speaker for one of those 2 or 3 days was the former Archbishop Emeritus of South Africa, Desmond Tutu. I vividly remember the well-organized demonstrations that took place in front of Old South Church that whole weekend. Well-organized demonstrations that were clearly from the signs that were being carried, and by the rhetoric that was being, the verbal rhetoric that was being espoused, was being led by Christian and Jewish Zionists in the greater Boston area. And I remember the names of some of the, I recalled then the names of some of the organizations that were at the helm. That is one of the reasons. The second reason is the Wikipedia on Aafia Siddiqui. One of the things I've been arguing for a number of years is that when it comes to certain issues, especially hot button political issues, you can't rely on Wikipedia for facts, for truthful information. The information there when it comes to those types of subjective issues is very distorted. On Aafia Siddiqui, I have not seen more pages of distorted information on any figure than on Aafia Siddiqui. Those are the most I have seen. And from time to time I visit, and I know for a fact that there have been others who have changed information to try to correct misinformation, and then immediately it gets changed back. So her pages have been closely monitored, and only a well-financed, well-organized entity is able to do that. So that, and then the third reason is, again, my own experiences on college and university campuses. I have witnessed up close and personal how much, again, well-organized opposition there has been to human rights discussions around Aafia Siddiqui on college and universities campuses when I have been involved to speak, the very few occasions I've been involved to speak on these issues. And speaking of the few occasions, it's also a reflection, again, the intimidation factor of how the Muslim Students Association, even though Aafia Siddiqui was one of the bright lights, she is one of the most respected behind the scenes luminaries of the MSA in the United States of America, and yet there is a silence when it comes to Aafia Siddiqui and the ability of these organizations to have forums for Aafia on their colleges and universities. There's a silence, and there has been a silence for years when it comes to this, just like it is among our major Muslim organizations. And I'm hoping that, given where we are today in this pandemic, this focus on human rights issues now in the United States in the wake of Black Lives Matter and what have you, that bi'idhnillah, this will change. I'm hoping that it will change. But my experiences underscore the legitimacy of what our sister had to say about this well-orchestrated campaign of vilification against Aafia Siddiqui that's been going on for years. I welcome
may I add,
yes,
it's not just Aafia Siddiqui. It's not just Aafia Siddiqui. It is what they do to misguide the thinking of people.
Yes.
To put a negative pale over the bright light of Islam, and over the bright stars of Islam, and over the bright institutions of Islam. Anything that's going to bring light and bring the truth to the forefront of the mindset of humans is always going to be an issue. This recent murder of George Floyd has stimulated the interest of people and focused more on the continuing injustices that have been done to Black Americans. I call them Black Americans because they're here, but in particular the sons and daughters of slaves, that people that were brought to the United States to be enslaved. More and more people are becoming involved. One of my deepest concerns is that we don't permit the fire of concern that is blazing amongst American people to die out, because the disbeliever, the oppressor, he's kept his fires burning in this country here for 4 centuries and for 240 something years as a nation. And although they have the great epithets that says one nation under God, liberty and justice for all, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All these great things that we find in some of the tracts of American understanding of what America is supposed to be, proves that America is the land of the hypocrite, the land of and not the land of the free and the home of the brave, but rather the land of the coward and the home of the slave. Mm-hmm. So the knee that this officer had on the neck of George Floyd to kill him is the same knee that they've had on the neck of whole nations for the last 500 years. The minute they were permitted to steal the knowledge from Spain and share it throughout Europe, for the last 400 or 500 years, the world has had a lot of problems. And they continue to try to misinform people about what the truth is so that people don't know how to decide. And they can't decide about Aafia Siddiqui, a 5 foot, 110, 5'4", whatever, 110-pound woman with a 15, she's killing somebody or attempted murder. You don't get 86 years for attempted murder. You don't get 86 years for trying to fight your way out of a situation. And I'm not to say that that's what she did, but that's what they're accusing her of. And whatever they've accused her of is a lie.
That's right. And I've often said that if Aafia had done, my own perspective, if Aafia Siddiqui had done what they accused her of, attempted to grab a soldier's rifle and shoot her way out of captivity after 5 years of secret imprisonment and torture based upon nothing but lies and deceits, if she had done that, I would defend her. I would be in the front of the defense of her right to have done that under those circumstances. But the fact of the matter is she did not. It was just one of those manufactured lies in order to cover up. You saying what, Imam?
Yeah, she never shot any gun.
Yeah, right. She did.
She never shot anyone.
Right.
She was a captive by other people. What is she doing captive by American soldiers from another country? What are they doing over there?
Right. Yeah.
For what? Well, I mean, you know, this. Listen, the European feels that they have the right to invade any place they want and do whatever they want to whoever they want, whether it's domestic or it's foreign. The British didn't leave China until 2000. They were in India. They're in the Sudan. The French are in North Africa. The French are in Senegal. We're speaking you and I, black men, are speaking the King's English as well as they do. Why are we speaking English? It's because they're relentless in their desire to want to control the lives of people and to lie about what they do.
Imam Faaruuq, we are in the final minutes of our broadcast. Time has gone so quickly. I have this final question for you, and then I just want to invite you to share some final thoughts on any issue that you choose to share final thoughts on. Relative to the human rights challenges that we're being faced with, whether it has directly to do with Aafia or other matters, other related matters. The final question has to do with, you know, it revolves around what former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark had to say. Ramsey Clark, who is now in his 90s, a man who was the Attorney General of the United States, the highest law enforcement office in the land, during one of the most turbulent and significant decades in American history, the 1960s. A man who, after he left government office, remained engaged, remained active in the struggle to try to change America for the better. A man who has traveled all over the world. A man who is an expert on U.S. constitutional law and international law. His organization, the International Action Center, monitored the entire trial from start to finish of Aafia Siddiqui in New York City, as I did. Our good friend Sarah Flounders, one of the veteran activists with the International Action Center, and a number of others from the IAC were in the courtroom every day.
What did you say?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me all right? Imam Faaruuq, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, all right. So
yes.
What I'm okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so what I'm saying is Ramsey Clark, with full knowledge of this case, with full knowledge of who Aafia Siddiqui is, he has described her case as the worst case of individual injustice he has ever witnessed. This is his assessment. What would you, and I agree with his assessment. I fully agree. With all the cases and issues I have been involved in over the years, this is the worst case I have ever witnessed myself. With that being said, what would you say to the prominent leaders and even the not so prominent leaders and activists in the United States who are Muslim and the major Muslim organizations? What would you say to them vis-a-vis this sister of ours who is now in her 18th year of wrongful imprisonment? What would you say? What would your message to them be in the days going forward?
One of the things I think is necessary is for them to be aware. Many people don't even know. So ignorance is not bliss. As a matter of fact, ignorance is a great plague to the affairs of humankind. Many of them don't know much about Aafia Siddiqui, but they should read into what has been said about her and put it on a scale for themselves, and then begin to chime in as regards the injustice that has been done to her, and so many others. We might want to talk about it. Certainly, I know that you're involved in the case of our brother, good Imam down in Atlanta, Hrap Brown, who's been in prison for years for something that they can't prove. And if you're, as a Muslim leader, not involved in the concerns of the oppressed Muslims in this country and throughout the world, then you are not really a good Muslim. So the first thing I would advise them is to become educated as to what the case of Aafia Siddiqui, and then try to put it on the forefront, on the bit of, because if you solve the problem for her and for Hrap Brown, I'm using his name because many people don't know his Muslim name, then you would have solved some of the problems, because they act as a test case for how we will respond to this type of oppression. And so they have to first find out what is her condition, what is her circumstance, what is she suffering through, and they need to speak out against it and bring her name to the forefront of their affair. You know, what I found out about most people who are in the position, whether it's political or religious, sometimes they're afraid to speak out. You get in trouble sometimes when you speak out about wrongdoing. But our affair as Muslims, one of the greatest things we can do is to speak truth to the oppressor. And if they're afraid to do that, then they really can't be considered my leader.
Absolutely. Imam Faaruuq.
One of the people that I would follow or support.
Imam Faaruuq, we are at the end of the program. What I want to do is invite you to share some closing thoughts on whatever you would like to say, whether it has to do directly with this issue or a related matter. We are right now in the grips of a national and a global pandemic. Our nation is in the grip of uprisings that are challenging the status quo, and you know, we are also right at the cups of an election that will be one of the most significant and consequential elections of our lifetime. On any of these issues, or on all three of them, you know, in 3 minutes, what would you like to say to the audience? What, you know, closing thoughts would you like to leave to those who will tune into this, who are tuned in now live, or those who will see it later, inshallah ta'ala, via the video that will be available later? Your thoughts.
First of all, I seek refuge in Almighty Allah, and I begin in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. I think it's of the utmost importance that we as Muslims must realize who we are, what we are, and where we are. Us being, we're not in Pakistan, especially we who are in America. We're not in France. We're not in China. We're in America. And we have to realize what's going on. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to give ourselves direction or take direction from the Quran, and also be aware of the things that are going on around us and be involved. And be involved with a sense of inspiration to bring about change. We cannot let evil live and keep on praying and fasting and claiming the oneness of Allah and the Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, blessed and exalted is He, and still see all this evil that's going on and not be involved wholeheartedly, inspired to be involved wholeheartedly. Allah says in the Quran, those who believe and do good works. The good works at this time is to be involved in what we say is jihad. Now, you don't like the word, it means to struggle against wrongdoing. It doesn't mean to take up arms against our country's leadership. It means to be able to speak an effective word to make sure that this evil that cannot continue to live and to make people aware. That means you have to educate yourself. You have to read about Aafia Siddiqui. You have to read about George Floyd. You have to know what's going on. And I know that sometimes it takes a lot of space on the hard drive of our minds and hearts so that we feel overwhelmed. The other thing is we have to look for solutions, because we can't be aware of problems and not find out what the solutions are. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to vote because we're voting for Kufar. No, we're voting for position. We're voting against one thing to bring about a change. And so when people say they shouldn't vote, I say you should vote, at least to say that we don't want this one. We're not going to make a mention of that, who it is. And not that we particularly want the other one, but the other one that we're going to be voting for, and we must vote for him, even that he has many issues of concern to me, puts him in a position of having to respond with a goodness to address the issues that we are currently facing. I believe that we might even be soon to be facing anarchy in this country, because if the other guy loses, the people who will follow him are going to be very, very unhappy with his loss, and they're going to and it doesn't end with voting. The struggle has to be a continuing concern at all levels. If you want to bring this country in particular, this country under the leadership of people who are righteous, then you should be voting for those who are righteous and good. You should understand the problems that exist and how, whether we have socioeconomic problems, we have human rights problems, we have global environmental problems, and we have to be aware of all the things that are around us and realize where we should be placing our money and our votes. And if you're not, and our effort, the struggle goes on and will continue to go on. It's not going to end, even if we would have a Muslim president and this was a Muslim country, or if it was really a truly good Christian country. The effort doesn't stop in trying to bring about change and speaking up about what is wrong and trying to ensure that the good continues to live.
Alhamdulillah. Imam Abdullah Faaruuq.
Keep on struggling.
Yes, indeed, indeed. In fact, in South Africa, that saying "aluta continua," the struggle continues. It is an ever continuing struggle. Aluta continua. Yeah, mashallah.
South Africa is another great issue. We're talking about America, but South Africa is another example of the oppressive hand of people who try to oppress black people, people of color, and to keep themselves in position. They need to go. You know what I have to say for the white people in South Africa? Go home, Yankee.
Well,
leave, and leave it in the hands of the black people who know how to control their own land.
Well,
you have no right there.
But that's another conversation, Imam Faaruuq, especially given the changes on the surface that were supposed to have taken place in South Africa with the fall of apartheid, and the unfortunate shortcomings of our brothers who do look like us now. But mashallah, that's another discussion for another time. I want to thank you for joining us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with the work that you have been doing and continue to do there in Boston with those who follow your leadership. May Allah ta'ala continue to bless those of us among the Muslims and among the non-Muslims who are striving to make a positive difference in this country and wherever they are. And we ask Allah ta'ala to bless us to die not except in a state of Islam. Those of us who have made the declaration of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. On that note, I want to
cling fast to the rope of Allah. Allah be that.
Yes. Ameen. Ameen.
I want to thank the people who are hosting this program. May Allah bless them for the work that they do to provide a forum of a program such as this.
Ameen.
And I advise everyone, cling fast to the rope of Allah altogether, be not divided, and believe in Allah, be Muslim, and don't die unless you're in submission to His will.
Ameen. And with that, we close with Al-Asr. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal-Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati. وَتَوَصَّى بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَصَّى بِالصَّبْرِ. May Allah Ta'ala bless everyone with a beautiful day, and those of you who are in South Africa with you're into the night now, may Allah Ta'ala bless those of you who will be going to bed soon with a peaceful night's rest and a happy morning's rise. On that note, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.